Thief, how dare you touch what isn't yours? The voice echoed through the marble hall, cold and sharp. A diamond bracelet lay on the floor, right beside her trembling hands. The billionaire's guards closed in, cameras flashing, whispers rising. She was just the maid, poor, black, invisible. He was untouchable, rich, white, and furious. Everyone believed him. No one believed her. But in 7 days, the courtroom would fall silent. And the truth, hidden in plain sight, would destroy everything he thought he could control. Have you ever been judged for something you didn't do, just because of who you are? Tell us in the comments. Before we begin, hit subscribe. It's appreciated. It was early morning in the city of Atlanta when Grace adjusted her uniform and tied her apron, just like she had done every day for the past 5 years. The sun was barely up, but the mansion was already awake. The billionaire, Richard Harlow, liked everything perfect before he opened his eyes. The breakfast steaming, the curtains pulled, the silver polished until it gleamed. Grace never complained. She needed this job. Her son, Malik, was in college, and every paycheck she earned went toward his tuition. She worked quietly, respectfully, never raising her voice, never drawing attention. In a house full of wealth, she tried her best to disappear. The staff barely spoke to her, though she'd been there longer than most. The butlers looked down on her accent, the guests avoided her eyes. Yet Grace carried herself with quiet dignity, the kind that made her stand out, even when she didn't mean to. One morning, as she polished the glass table in the grand dining room, she noticed something strange, a drawer slightly open, a glint of diamonds peeking through. She closed it gently, not giving it a second thought. But someone was watching, someone who'd been waiting for a reason to make her fall. When the bracelet went missing that night, the whispers began. A maid had access, a maid had need, and to them that was enough. Still, Grace believed the truth would clear her name. She didn't know that truth meant nothing when you looked like her. And your accuser was a billionaire whose word could ruin lives. If you were in Grace's shoes, would you keep quiet and hope justice found you, or fight back even when no one would believe you? Tell us in the comments. The next morning, Grace arrived at work to find the mansion gates locked. 2 guards stood waiting, arms crossed. Her heart pounded as one of them stepped forward and handed her a folded paper. "You're being investigated," he said, his tone flat. She didn't even understand at first. Investigated for what? Inside, the house buzzed with tension. Richard Harlow stood near the grand staircase, his designer suit perfectly pressed, his face cold with anger. On the table beside him sat the empty velvet case where the diamond bracelet once gleamed. The same bracelet she had cleaned just hours before. The accusation was fast, brutal, the kind that didn't ask for truth, just obedience. "You were the last one in that room," he said. His voice was calm, too calm. The other maids watched from the hallway, pretending not to stare. Grace tried to speak, but her voice broke. Every word she said made it worse. No one believed her. Not the house manager, not the staff, not even the police when they arrived. They treated her like a criminal, asking questions that stung more than cuffs ever could. "Why'd you need it? You struggling with money? Be honest, Miss Grace." They searched her small apartment, her bag, even the pockets of her uniform. Nothing. Still, Richard pressed charges. He didn't need evidence. He had power. And in his world, that was more than enough. The story spread fast. Maid steals from billionaire employer. News outlets loved it. Online, strangers called her names she'd spent a lifetime trying to forget. Her church friends avoided her. Even Malik, her son, began receiving messages from classmates mocking his thief mother. Grace felt her world closing in. Every night she prayed for strength, for a miracle. But the day of court came quickly, and she had no lawyer. No one would represent her for free, and she couldn't afford even 1 hour of legal defense. She stood alone in the courtroom, facing Richard and his expensive team. Cameras lined the back of the room. The judge entered, and whispers filled the air. The prosecutor called her a liar before she even spoke. Grace's hands trembled as she clutched her worn Bible, the same one she had carried since her mother's passing. But then, just as the hearing began, a sound broke the silence. The click of shoes, steady, confident. A young man walked in, suit slightly wrinkled, eyes burning with quiet anger. The courtroom turned. Richard froze. Grace's breath caught in her throat. It was Ethan, Richard Harlow's son. What was he doing here? And why was he looking at his father that way? The courtroom fell silent as Ethan Harlow stepped forward. His voice was calm but carried a weight that filled the room. He asked to address the judge, something no one expected. His father's lawyers tried to stop him, whispering in panic, but Ethan ignored them. He looked directly at Grace, then at his father. For months, Ethan had watched from the sidelines, the quiet heir, invisible in his father's empire. But that morning, he had come with something no one saw coming: the truth. He placed a small flash drive on the judge's bench. "This contains footage from the security cameras in the East Wing," he said. The same wing where the bracelet went missing. Richard's jaw tightened. His lawyers objected, but it was too late. The judge allowed it. The footage played on the big screen, grainy but clear enough. The room watched as a figure entered the jewelry room late that night. Not Grace, not even a maid. It was Richard's assistant, the one who'd been whispering in his ear all week. She opened the drawer, slipped something into her pocket, and left. Gasps filled the room. Grace's eyes widened, tears flooding her vision. Richard's face turned pale, his hands gripping the table. For the first time, the billionaire who had humiliated her couldn't speak. Ethan turned to his father, his voice trembling but firm. "You accused an innocent woman, ruined her name, and made her a spectacle. All to protect your reputation. You talk about dignity, but you forgot what it looks like." The judge called for order, but the crowd was already buzzing. The cameras zoomed in on Grace, tears streaking down her face, a mix of shock and relief. In that moment, the balance of power shifted. The same people who had judged her now looked away, ashamed. The billionaire's empire of lies cracked under the weight of truth. The judge asked Grace if she wanted to press charges. She couldn't speak, just shook her head softly. She didn't want revenge. She just wanted her name back. What do you think she should have done in that moment? Forgive or fight back after everything she endured? Tell us in the comments before we continue. When the verdict was read, Grace didn't cheer. She didn't even smile. She simply closed her eyes and exhaled, a breath she'd been holding for weeks. The judge cleared her name, the charges were dropped, and the courtroom that once saw her as a criminal now watched her walk out as a free woman. But freedom felt heavier than she imagined. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, microphones flashing like fireflies. They wanted quotes, emotions, drama. Grace said only one thing: truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs to be seen. Then she walked away, head high, shoulders steady, the same quiet strength she'd always carried, now shining in the light. Ethan caught up to her on the courthouse steps. He apologized, not as a billionaire's son, but as a man ashamed of the world he'd grown up in. He admitted that he had seen things for years, the looks, the whispers, the quiet racism that everyone ignored. Grace listened, then nodded. "You did the right thing," she said. "That's what matters now." In the weeks that followed, the story spread far beyond the mansion walls. Grace's name became a symbol, not of scandal, but of resilience. People who had judged her began to apologize. Some too late, others in silence. Malik returned home, holding her hand as they walked through their neighborhood. For the first time, his pride in her was louder than his fear. As for Richard Harlow, his reputation never recovered. The assistant confessed, and the media turned on him, exposing years of arrogance and hidden prejudice. He had power once. Now he had only shame. Grace returned to her church the following Sunday. The choir sang louder, the congregation rose when she entered. She wasn't just a maid anymore. She was proof that even in a world that doubts you, truth has a way of rising, no matter how deep it's buried. And maybe that's the message we all need to remember. Sometimes justice doesn't come from the powerful, but from those brave enough to speak when silence feels safer. How many more lives must be broken before truth is believed the first time? Tell us what you think below. Show some love with a like and subscribe to stay inspired.